I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our afternoon keynote. And I was reading the bio, and when the bio starts with, "I was a rocket scientist," you know you're in for an interesting treat. And then when you go on to see, Michael was a rocket scientist who once developed a jet propulsion system at the age of 16. So hang on to your hats, folks. Many of you might know Michael. He's the CEO and founder of League, which is a digital health platform that will disrupt the health insurance industry. And he was the founder and CEO of Kobo, who you may also have heard of Kobo, a global leader in ebooks, a DocSpace, a pioneer in cloud storage. He's really a serial entrepreneur who has built multiple transformative technologies that across several industries with over $1 billion in exits. Michael is a member of the Perimeter Institute's Board of Directors, the Mars Discovery District's Board of Governors, and sits on the Board of Trustees at the Ontario Science Centre. He's a member of the Creative Destruction Lab Board and YPO. He's a mentor and investor in new technology companies through his company, Three Angels Capital. Please help me welcome well, you could be a doctor too. He's pretty smart. He's a rocket scientist. Mike Serbinis to the stage.
So this is like the quickest way to become a doctor is do a talk here. All right, thanks for that great introduction. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our journey building League. League started a couple years ago, and I'll give you a taste of the process. But most of the first couple of years of any startup, and from the introduction you heard that I've been doing this for a while. But most of the first couple of years are pretty sad and depressing until you figure out what, in fact, you're doing and what the business is. And for us, we started about 2 years ago, last Saturday. I guess that was the day that we announced League. And very recently, this summer, we started to figure out what, in fact, the business opportunity was here. And it sits squarely in the health insurance market, although we don't really think of ourselves as an insurance company. We think of ourselves as a life optimization company. We are squarely going after that market, and our competitors are all the incumbent health insurance companies you can think of in the world. It's a giant market. It's about $1 trillion market just in North America, the employer-sponsored health insurance market. So pretty tall order for a pretty small group of people that before 2 years ago knew nothing about healthcare. So as you heard from the introduction, I started as a physicist, but then I moved to Silicon Valley. Elon Musk and I built a search engine company before we even called things search engines, and just started building company after company in different categories. The last one being Kobo, which was all about books, and we didn't really know anything about publishing before we started that company either. But we're about 50 people here in Toronto, probably about 100 people by December, growing very fast now. And like in the world of movies, when you make a hit movie, you tend to want to make the next movie with the same actors. So the same goes in startups. We're a group of people that have done this a few times. So the title serial entrepreneurs, which we get called, is sort of accurate. We like to build things, and what we're currently building is in the space of healthcare, but with the business model of health insurance. We're a pretty substantially funded company. I'll talk more about that after, but at $25 million US for what's called a Series A, an early stage investment. That would be the largest ever Series A in at least Canadian history. There's a few bigger ones in the US, but not many. And out of nowhere, while we started as this company all about empowering people to be healthy, we're all of a sudden being called a fintech company, which I'm sure is pretty weird. It was weird for me when it happened. I didn't even know we were entered into this list, but I kind of came into the office one day on Monday morning, and all of a sudden I see that we're one of the top 50 fintech companies in the world, which I think is a pretty interesting concept. If you think of the world that you all live in, that there will be companies entering that world that are known as and thought of as fintech companies. Because primarily what we do while we're empowering people to be healthy is move a lot of money around, and we do it a lot more efficiently than any of the incumbents today. So let me tell you a bit more. Health insurance is absolutely not where we started this idea of league, but is the market that today we are focused on. And like I said, it's about $1 trillion in the US and Canada. It's trillions across Europe, Asia, South America, and parts of the Middle East that even have it. A lot of places don't have it today. And it's characterized by this very simple statement. Things keep getting more expensive, on the order of 10 to 15% year on year, and the experience for the end consumer continues to lag, or frankly, in most countries, it just has not changed at all. The experience for the consumer tends to be, paper-based, tends to be slow, tends to not include services that, frankly, today's consumer expects when it comes to thinking about their health and their well-being. Absolutely the case in the US, and you see this in other countries, perhaps less so here in Canada, is that the entire market has misaligned incentives between the payers, the employers, the consumer, and the providers. And increasingly, where you've got now a giant cohort in the millennials being a big part of the workforce, millennials and Gen Xers being over 75% of the workforce, increasingly what their parents had as health insurance, which is really still what's on the market today, no longer works, and they don't want it. So that's the market we're going after, but we did not start there, and in a million years I would never have thought that I'd be in the health insurance business, but here we are. We started with this very simple concept, which was about empowering people to be healthy every day. And it sounds like a pretty vacuous, vague statement, but it all came from this experience that I had. I was just leaving my last company, which was Kobo. We grew to about $1 billion in sales in 4 years. We were in 190 countries. It was constant travel around the world, and I was looking for a break. I was just telling my friend Cassie that we had our third daughter right around that time, and I just wanted to be home. There was a weekend that my wife organized for us to be in Los Angeles, and I happened to be at the LA Children's Hospital hearing Bill Clinton and a renowned pharma entrepreneur talk about the future of medicine. And it really struck me that this future, which was all about personalized, preventative, very data-oriented, high-tech kind of medicine, very Star Trek-like, it struck me that it missed the everyday frustrations and frictions and costs and pain that I face as a consumer who wants to access healthcare. And so this idea started, and like I said, I wasn't planning on doing anything for a while, but stay at home and hang out with my kids. This idea about, well, what if you had to redesign this? What would it look like in the future? What would healthcare look like, or at least the access part of healthcare? What would it look like? And this idea that the future would likely be always on and not something that happens by intervention once in a while. This idea that it would be more me in control of what that looks like, and it would be a lot more personalized. It would probably be a lot cheaper, and at least elements of friction could be taken out. And so we kind of mapped that out very quickly, came up with this idea of a mission statement, which embedded in this is the idea that the future of health is absolutely consumer-centric, and it's more about prevention than certainly it has been in the last 100 years, and it's something that you do every day. And even the name league comes from the origin of public health policy in ancient Rome, where the Romans figured out that if they could keep people alive longer, they'd raise more money in taxes. So they came out with a policy which was clean water, garbage removal, and personal responsibility. And in the personal responsibility list of things that they suggested for Roman citizens was this idea of walking for an hour a day as something you could do to be healthy. And the distance you could walk in an hour in ancient Rome was called a league. So that's where the name comes from, and that's the mission. So back to the question of what would it look like if it was consumer-driven? And doing what I do, whether it was books with Kobo or email or storage, and what we were calling global information, but eventually got renamed to search. Every time you kind of start with this kind of imagination, kind of visioning question, if you had to start from scratch and redo it all, and there's nobody that was going to get in your way, what would it look like? And almost always you're looking for some combination of these words: easier, faster, cheaper, better. In this context, I can think of so many examples in healthcare where I would want it to be easier, where I would want it to be instant versus something that would have to be scheduled, and I would have to wait and then go to the next step and not really know how it all worked. There's many examples of how it could be cheaper, and certainly better, this idea that it would be less one size fits all and more personalized to me. So 2 out of 4, maybe 3 out of 4, that was the thinking. Let's go and try and do this. And what we discovered along the way, and what we had built, was just a very simple thing, a very simple piece of technology, which had an app, a mobile phone piece of software that could access a network. And at least in Canada, we talk less about provider networks, but certainly a very common concept south of the border, where you could discover a health provider that you were looking for, schedule an appointment, and pay. And that whole transaction could take no more than 10 seconds. Literally 10 seconds from I have an idea or I have an ailment, I want to find somebody to help me that's rated, reviewed, close to my house. I see the service, I see a price if that's applicable, I book it, it's done, I go and have that service, and at some point after that service is complete, payment or the transaction just happens, just like an Uber transaction happens the moment 20 minutes ago when I walked out of my cab here, it just happened and I didn't think about it, and there's no receipts or anything for me to worry about. So that's what we built, and then we started trying it out. And that's what you do in startup land. You build something. You never build all of what you think your vision is or the entire plan. You build something quickly, and you start trying it. And very quickly, we realized there's parts of that people really liked, but there's parts that didn't really work. And we quickly realized, and there's a saying in in the world of startups, which is follow the money. We realized that we needed to go to where most people think is the start of their healthcare journey, and that was with their health benefits or health insurance. Extended healthcare, to be specific, here in Canada, and in the US, of course, your health plan from your employer. And so what we did is we kind of built out that platform, which started out very small, just a simple app that can access a bunch of services. And by the way, those services initially were nothing medical. These were paramedical at best, fitness, wellness. We thought we'd stay away from anything that was complicated or regulated or difficult in any way. So we decided to build on that. And so we had the provider network, a provider piece of software, consumer user piece of software that was all on a mobile phone. And we built an employer piece of software and a way also for carriers, for underwriters, for those providing a financial instrument to plug into us as well. And if you package all of that up, and actually this is one of those stories of kind of serendipity. Like, we didn't know what we were building, to be quite honest. It took, and it was about a year ago right around now, that someone said, this kind of looks like maybe a health insurance company or something like that. You can move money from employers to providers. You can do it a lot more efficiently. We can do it for about 2 to 3 cents versus adjudicating a claim is something that can take tens of dollars and take not milliseconds but days, weeks, months. I just got in the mail something from I think it was April, and it was a $14 check on my wife's benefits. So you can see that we didn't think we were going to become a benefits company. This just kind of happened. So I was on my wife's benefits, and I got a $14 check in the mail for a service that I don't even remember what the service was, but clearly it wasn't $14, and what a dissatisfying experience that was. But anyways, we end up building this offering that we now position as better benefits, or in other words, we've built a high-tech health plan. And let me tell you what's in it today, with the full disclosure that the slideware is already out of date, and there's a lot more coming. And our definition of this future health insurance company is really not what you would think of in the classic case or classic sense of an insurance company, but it's really back to that original mission of just empowering the consumer with their own health. That's what it's about, and you'll see some of the other services that we have planned. So today we offer health services that we bring to your company or near your company. We offer health plans, so full insured plans, and of course in different flavors that also have pooled products, things like life and long-term disability and so on, and then spending accounts. Spending accounts which have many three-letter acronym names, like a healthcare spending account here in Canada, or a health spending account which is very different in the US, or a health reimbursement arrangement. Many different names, many different tax treatments by country, by jurisdiction, but really for the end consumer, kind of all the same thing. So I'll talk more about that in a few slides. So overall, our model is based on this premise that we are moving to a defined contribution model. Just like pensions move from defined benefits to defined contribution, so will the world of health insurance. And we think this is good for a number of reasons. One is it gives the end consumer a lot more choice and control about the services that they need and what's right for them, but also gives greater cost control and greater transparency and certainty for the employer. So, traditional health insurance plan has 18 envelopes of different, defined benefits. So basically a lot of promises that are constrained that mostly don't get used. And what we're suggesting is you start with a spending account, or essentially a digital wallet filled with a notional amount of money, and then you can layer on insured options for catastrophic events, or true insured type services. A high deductible plan is one example of that in the US, but you could imagine other insured options. And when it comes to the actual insurance part, it turns out there's a lot of people that do that part really well. And it turns out that most of them are just really bad at, interfacing with a consumer. In fact, most of them don't even know who the consumer is. I heard the stat the other day, which I thought was quite surprising, but the average insurance company has contact information and knows only about 8 to 12% of their end consumers. Because to them, the broker is the customer, and the employer is one step removed, and you're one more step removed beyond that, let alone your spouse or your kids. So we decided to partner with insurance companies that would provide us with the financial instrument of basically an insured product, a risk-based product, and we would just plug that into our platform. So in the vein of, Uber is the transportation company that owns no cars, I guess we're the insurance company that actually owns no insurance risk. We just outsource it. And our first partner in this vein for the Canadian market is RBC Insurance. And so if you come to League and your business is looking for a health benefits plan, an extended healthcare plan, and you choose to also have a risk-based product or insured product, under the hood, that is RBC. All you ever see, however, is League. And if you have an issue or you're looking for a dentist or whatever, all you ever talk to is League. And our plan is basically we would get more of these companies to be our partner as we enter new markets. And over time, we could decide that we could just do that part on our own. Because as with most insurance companies, what do they do with that risk? They just offload it to a reinsurer. So with some greater scale and with some greater skills, underwriting, and in our case, we would do it very differently. We would do it with data and algorithms and machine learning technology. We could, in fact, be an entirely licensed insurance company. But for now, we're not. The experience, probably the second big thing about why we're different, is digital end-to-end. And we say digital first. So everything about us is accessible in about a heartbeat on your mobile phone, in the League app. And the idea is that we want to basically evaporate anything that is frustrating for you about a typical experience using your benefits, or even getting in touch with a healthcare provider, getting a service, whether that's a physical appointment somewhere, an appointment at your home or your place of work, or a digital telehealth type appointment, or a product or service, a digital service. We want to make all of the friction go away, and then help you focus on the part that's important, which is getting the services and the care you need. So the concept of our application design is really that we're all different, and every single one of us will have a league of our own, of healthcare providers that we've chosen for the place that we live in, and perhaps the particular set of objectives and health challenges, perhaps chronic condition that we have. So my home screen would look very different from one of yours, based on where we lived, and that I'm a 43-year-old male that's, knock on wood, generally healthy, and you're different. And on that home screen, you see a number of faces. These are people that you can actually connect with and talk to, or get healthcare services from. And this particular one, there's, I guess, a psychologist and a psychotherapist, and of course, I think you can actually talk to me, which may be odd, but anyways, you got a league of your own. And the idea is you can tap on any one of those people and get direct access to us. And that's to, for example, get a service. And I think this, for some reason, is not animating, but it's an example of talking to somebody that is a therapist that you can have a quick chat with. She can respond with, are you in any trouble? Do you need any help? And if so, you can either go right to a 911 call or right to a video chat. And so the idea of scheduling and the idea of waiting to get access kind of goes away. And this idea of a conversational interface, which sometimes is the real person, and sometimes it's what's called a bot, piece of software that is doing the legwork for either you or the provider. You can, of course, access our health network, and this is an example of jumping right in to a certain part of the network and looking for a category. But of course, you can look for a category, find a service, either access it instantly or schedule an appointment. It all takes a matter of seconds. And all of our providers are location-based. They're rated. We have information about the services they provide. Oftentimes, we have any prices on services they provide. And over time, we'll also have performance data, which it has been certainly a big theme south of the border, that ultimately what we want is better outcomes for the money we're investing. So the idea of performance data being publicly available and then transparent, much as if you were looking at an Amazon-like marketplace, where everything's rated, reviewed, location-based. You've got the content you need and some information you need to make a decision. That's how the app works. When it comes to payment, you've got a digital wallet, and you can use this in a number of ways. You can see that this is my wallet. There's $2,000 left in my healthcare spending account. So we're, I guess, with 5 weeks left to go in the year. I also have a lifestyle account. This particular wallet does not have a drug card in it, but you can imagine my drug card being in here. Of course, my credit card is there. And the idea is you can use this wallet very simply, either automatically when you've booked an appointment or you've bought a service or purchased a prescription. Or in the event that someone that you went to as a healthcare provider was not in our network, you could snap a picture of that receipt or statement or document and instantly make a claim, and the money would just go into your bank account. Or you could just, like your Starbucks app, kind of tap to pay or scan the barcode at participating providers. So a true digital wallet that you can use for all your healthcare transactions. And the entire experience is personalized. So behind the scenes, we have machine learning, which is another fancy way of saying predictive algorithms, artificial intelligence type algorithms that are learning all the time and making recommendations to you based on your profile. We do simple things like give you reminders. Mike, you haven't been to the dentist in 6 months. Normally you do that. Can I make an appointment for you right now? And we can also make recommendations of best practices. For a 43-year-old male living in Ontario, you should do this. And we can also point you towards better prices, which in some markets is even more important, where you could go 1 mile further to the east and have the same procedure done for $12,000 less. So the entire experience is personalized to you. And lastly, all this is underpinned by what we consider a modern health network, which I think of very much like an Amazon-like experience for everything under the sun when it comes to health. So this is not only healthcare providers or appointments that you can access or digital telehealth, telemedicine type services. These are apps that can be FDA approved and have a DIN number. These are group services, could be something as simple as a membership to a gym, and really this goes across categories. So what started with fitness, yoga, physio, chiro is now I think 85 different categories and growing. There was a company that we were talking to today that is signing up called Progenity, which is a genetics firm out of Los Angeles. There's pretty much anything that you could imagine. Our health network is growing by the day. And what used to take us, it took us, I think, our first 6 months to get to 100 providers. We're adding tens of thousands of providers per month now across the US and Canada. And for now, at least, our focus is on small businesses. And this is where kind of both the mission of the company about empowering people and the entrepreneurial find the money, follow the money mindset is. We learned along the way that if you look at companies under 100 employees in Canada, that's about 90% of all companies, 70% offer no form of extended coverage. So that smells like a business opportunity. In the US, the Affordable Care Act defines that mark a little bit differently. So under 50 employees, which is about 87% of all US companies, under 50 employees, the numbers are the same. Only about 23% of companies have any form of health insurance, which obviously includes medical coverage. So those are huge markets. Those two examples right there represent about $200 billion worth of market opportunity. If you add in all the companies that have, the same health plan that their parents did, that represents probably another 300 to 400 billion that is out there to go get. One of the stats that we learned about recently is that the average customer satisfaction or net promoter score, which is a measure that people use when it comes to health insurers, is 12%. Which is actually 4 points less than prisoners feel about prisons across the US. So it's pretty staggering, actually, that I didn't even know that they measured NPS for prisoners, but it's pretty sad that they're that poor. So anyways, there's a big opportunity here, and as a startup, you always end up looking at small businesses because you need to start to get the flywheel going, and it's hard to do that when the clock is ticking, you've got 12 months to go. But enterprise sales cycles take 12 to 24 months. So we started with small businesses, and it was the 10 employees, the 20 employees, the 100 employees. We've started to see examples of 1,000 and 5,000 and 10,000. So while the focus and the sweet spot is absolutely the small business, what we've learned is that really everybody has this problem of their way of accessing healthcare and health services through their benefits, their health insurance is often the way that they do that, and again, more so south of the border than here. It turns out that everybody's just unhappy with how that works today, and this idea that it keeps getting more expensive, yet somehow the experience is rooted in the 70s. So that's a giant market opportunity, and will only grow as we see larger and larger companies. This is also a very different thing that we do. So most of the health insurance market is intermediated by brokers or by third-party administrators. And my point earlier about most insurance companies don't have more than 12% of even just contact information, let alone more about you, about their end consumers, is precisely because most carriers go to market through brokers. So we generally go direct, and that said, we have some brokers that we are testing with, and we're trying to learn to see if that makes any sense at all for us. But we also have some alternative channels. And why alternative channels? Well, there's parties in the market or players in the market like banks that would love to be in this business, or parties in the market like accounting services. Why accounting services? Because if you're a business and you're trying to figure out that it may be time to start offering health insurance, your accountant is one of the first people to know. There's also examples like the so-called gig economy, where we have the expectation that we'll have about 150 million contract employees or contract workers in the US and Canada in the next couple of years. So a deal with Uber is something that we're working on as an example. Airbnb, that this is something that they can offer in a very a la carte menu style way to their constituents. So deals with platforms like Intuit and QuickBooks, and deals with banks, deals with wealth managers. These are just all different distribution points that bring traffic, web traffic, if you will, to the league website, and very quickly result in someone getting access to benefits. And unlike the traditional market, where you're often paying in terms of percentages, or there's a lot of fees, and this is pretty straightforward. You just pay a subscription to use the league platform, and it's often the employer that pays on the behalf of their employees. I talked about this already. Why this is important is just to give you a sense. When we raised money, I took a few meetings in Silicon Valley, a few meetings up here, and we had call it 75 million US of interest to come into this round. We wanted to raise 5 to 10 million. So the amount of interest into this category is massive, but it wasn't massive when I said, hey, we're building this this app that lets you access healthcare better, as a consumer. Everyone was like, really nice meeting you. I love Canada, but we're not interested. So there was this moment during that process where, and I can tell you that same moment in every one of my companies. There was this moment where we had to decide: are we going to be the fly on the elephant, or are we going to try to become an elephant? In this case, are we going to be this piece of software that we find some channel to sell through, maybe an insurance carrier, maybe the government, or are we going to try and become some new thing, some new form of insurance carrier, some new form of healthcare platform? I don't even have a name for it, but that was essentially the decision point. And I thought, well, let's try it in the next few meetings. And I went in saying, hey, this is our vision. It's all going to be consumer-centric, and we're building this massive entity. We're going direct. We're gonna create this massive storehouse of data. Yes, we're gonna be all encrypted and HIPAA compliant, PIPEDA, and everything else compliant. And we're gonna have machine learning algorithms that help make better decisions for consumers and help them get to better outcomes and help drive better performance per healthcare dollar. And as soon as I started saying that, you had to beat people off with a stick. So there's huge interest, and you could see that incumbent players were also interested. And so the question is, well, why would you take any investment dollars from an incumbent? It's something that I've done across several different companies, and they tend to be minority investors. They tend to be good partners for at least to learn. And they see a huge potential disruption coming. So this is a part of the let's learn how fast this is coming towards us type exercise, and a part of let's be a part of the upside equation. So you'll see Manulife, Power Financial, which owns Great-West Life, among many other assets, and RBC. So that's a little bit about the company up until now, and there's just, I mean, it's moving so fast. The slide was, from a few weeks ago at 50 employees. I think we're about 72 as of today, and the goal is to be about 100 by the end of the year, somewhere in the neighborhood of under 500 by the end of next year. We're across Canada right now, except for Quebec. We'll fix that in Q1. We're also in parts of the U.S. already. We have been since the start on the West Coast, from Seattle on down to L.A. And we're just preparing to start our rollout across the U.S. Of course, it's a lot more complex there. Carriers or potential financial partners tend to be very regionalized. And of course, the medical networks that we would have to build are also very regionalized. And we would have to build medical networks, not just health and paramedical type networks. So we're doing all of that. Of those numbers that I shared, they're all giant numbers of market size. If you just look at the top 10 cities or top 10 metro areas in the US, you get to about 85% of those numbers that I shared. So really our focus for 2017 is rolling out to those top 10 metro areas. We're also looking at markets in Europe, Asia, and South America, markets that have a number of characteristics that would make them optimal for us. But Germany, UK, Brazil, Hong Kong, Korea, Japan are pretty much the initial targets. And you might ask, why would you even bother doing that? Why not focus just on Canada? And it's because of this central belief that I have, just doing what I do and building tech companies, that tech is like an Olympic sport. You've got about 4 years to the next Olympics. It's always a global competition. There's only one podium, and nobody ever remembers number 3. So you've got a very limited period of time to be the platform for whatever the category is. And there's really only ever 2 players. I mean, tell me if you can name a third PC company that matters, personal computer company, or even a third cell phone company that matters for that fact. There just really aren't third place players. So you got to get big fast or you die trying. Second, one of the things that is not a part of our platform today is the idea of pharmacy or drug coverage. And so we'll be rolling that out in the beginning of the new year. So what will you be able to do? Well, of course, one of those channels could be your local pharmacist or the pharmacist in the cloud sitting at a call center or one of our partners. And you can talk to that pharmacist like you would if you walked into your local pharmacy and waited and got the right moment where you could talk to that person. I actually don't think people will go into pharmacies or that, like with movie stores and even bookstores. Although I said that about books, and clearly people still go into bookstores. But I don't really think that is going to be a thing for maybe a generation out. So at least for certain transactions, you'll be able to do them digitally, getting a script. Of course, drop ship to your home so that by the time you get home from work, it's just there, ready for you. That's something that we're hoping to bring, as well as your pharmacist on demand. And of course, complete integration with your digital wallet. So if you do happen to go into a pharmacy, you can of course just tap to pay, and we would use a conduit like Apple Pay or Google Wallet, or depending on the pharmacy, just scan your card from your phone. Integrated health services is something that's also coming in 2017. So today I've talked about our health network being really full of people and in some cases products, but you can imagine the health network being filled with digital services that you can access immediately. And the case I overheard in the panel before, the case of a mental health therapist, and the ability to regularly provide self-reported data and click, I need to talk to somebody right away, and access my therapist that way. Of course, a doctor or a health coach that is regularly monitoring your progress and can chime in and participate in care coordination or other recommendations for you. So you can imagine a whole different suite of services that are completely digital that you would access and would just be a part of your plan offered to you by League. So this is the story so far. It's only been 2 years. And like I said earlier, most of that time is spent in what I call the pit of despair, where you really don't know what you're doing. And eventually you figure it out. And so far, at least the version of figuring it out is that we're a new kind of health insurance company. But like I said, I don't like those words. A life optimization company sounds sexier, although it might not mean anything. But I think it does. And like I said at the beginning, none of us really had any form of healthcare background. We build giant technology platforms that 1 billion people use. That's what we do. And now we're focused on this category because we think it's important because, and all entrepreneurs say this, because I want it for myself, and I want it for my kids and everybody else that lives not only here, but around the world, where in some countries that we're focused on launching in 2017, there really isn't a system. So leapfrogging to something like this would be awesome. And frankly, the only way you could do it from a cost and infrastructure and timing standpoint. So we're focused on that original mission of empowering people to be healthy every day. What the business looks like, 5 years from now, I could not tell you, but it does feel like this market is ripe for disruption. We know 99%, or we know about 1% of what we should know, and we are hiring like crazy people that can help us along the way. So thank you very much.